If you're like 95% of entrepreneurs, your website is like a salesman who can't close a deal. Failing to bring in traffic, failing to get you leads, and saddest of all, it's failing to make you money. And if you're like that 95% of business owners, it's the same common mistakes that are holding you back. Mistakes that are really easy to identify and even easier to fix when you know about them. So in this super thorough video, I'm gonna show you the common mistakes that you're probably making with your website, the easy fix for each, and I'll even show you example website before and afters where I've gone in and fixed the mistakes myself so you can see the differences with your own eyes. You offer a valuable service and you want to charge a higher price for it, but if you want to put a premium price tag on your offers, there's really only one thing standing in your way. Your website looks cheap. In this video, I'm going to get to the bottom of the biggest difference makers between websites that look and feel high-end versus low rent, because here's the thing. Even if you're not on the high end of your industry price-wise, the things that can make a site look cheap just so happen to be the same things that can make it feel untrustworthy too. So this stuff actually applies to you in either case. We'll go over the most common elements that business owners get wrong and what to do instead so your website can go from this to more like this, this, or this. And if you think a simple high-end marketing makeover can't influence how people think of your business, let's jump back to the Bronx in the early 60s. Ruben and Rose Mattis were trying to get their little ice cream startup off the ground, but with every other ice cream brand vying for freezer space and competing on price, Rose and Ruben decided they'd actually go the opposite direction. Up, as in let's be the most expensive ice cream out there. See, back in those days, a pint cost less than 15 cents, but they were gonna charge 75. And they were of course planning to use nothing but the best ingredients, so the quality would be there. But how would they communicate that quality before someone had the chance to taste it? The marketing strategy was simple. They'd brand their ice cream as something exotic with old world European sophistication. And just like that, Häagen-Dazs was born. Not here, here. Serenity now! All it took was a little marketing magic to have people screaming for their ice cream even when they were charging 5 times what everyone else was. So how can you apply a similar strategy to your website? Well, one of my web business besties, Nicole, lives and breathes luxury web design, so I decided to give her a call.
Hi there, thank you for having me. My name is Nicole Heimer. I am the owner and creative director of Glorian Brand, and we design and build websites specifically for interior design firms.
So what do businesses need above and beyond normal websites when you're in that more luxury niche or higher price point?
So anytime that someone is going to hand over any money to anyone, they have to trust them, but we are talking about really big ticket items here. You know, an interior design project, no matter what the business model, it is a luxury service. It is not necessary like water or food or shelter itself. So the trust factor, the credibility factor is really important. And the design has to be tight. And what that means in practice is actually things like lots of white space, and making sure that everything is designed on a perfect grid. If things are a little off, if the website looks homemade at all, if it's off kilter or something is a little bit messy, it's just going to feel unsatisfying to the human brain, and it won't feel luxurious and it won't feel trustworthy, and it feels just a little bit cheap, which doesn't align with the product that they're buying.
And research backs Nicole up here. One recent study analyzed the user reactions to the design of 78 different websites, and they found that a few elements were consistent in creating that elevated perception of prestige, including lots of white space, like Nicole mentioned, and they also found that color plays a really big part in how high-end your website comes across. Specifically, more subdued color palettes tend to read as more premium and expensive than really bright ones.
So you want to be careful because we don't want to be really redoing our website or our brand every 5 seconds. So going neutral and sticking with black and whites is actually like the best way to go. Navy is also nice. You just want to go like super classic. If you want to go with those brighter colors, be prepared to put some work in and to like making it work. You're gonna need a more skilled designer on your side to like, you know, keep it tight and make it fit.
Tim, calm down.
I see a problem.
And the reason you want to keep it tight has to do with a little something called the halo effect. So it's a simple psychological principle that says that one trait influences how you feel about other unrelated traits. So when your prospects see how tight and together your website is, they'll apply the halo effect to it and start to assume that other parts of your business are equally as tight and together. Things like the quality of your service. And when they think your quality is better than the next guy, they'll be happy to pay more for it. So what else should you really pay attention to if you want your website to really feel more high-end?
Photography is incredibly important. It has to be well lit. You probably can't take the photos yourself. Unfortunately, you really need to get a professional involved. I always say, you know, if you have to prioritize getting a professionally made website, paying someone to build it for you, or getting professional photography done, always prioritize the photography, always.
Yes, I completely agree with that. But what if someone can't really afford to hire a photographer? How do you feel about using stock photos?
I have found, surprisingly, that some of, I know this is crazy, but some of the free stock sites, we've had better luck than some of the paid stock sites. So like unsplash.com is a really good free stock site. Like we find great stuff on there all the time. And then if you're going to pay for it, like iStock is very good, but check the free ones first because you can find some really good stuff.
So let's go over some general rules when it comes to choosing stock images that will sell you in the right light. So first of all, always go with natural facial expressions and body language over things like sky reaching, fist pumping, and literally jumping for joy, because contrary to what these photos might have you believe, nobody reacts this way in real life.
We've actually saved you $300 this month.
This is good.
Hello?
This is normal.
But it wasn't.
Also, make sure that your image choices have a really consistent look and feel from one to the next. So don't put a really bright, colorful photo right next to a dark and moody one. And always get images that are the right size. I see so many otherwise great looking websites that choose a photo that's too small and it ends up really pixelated and blurry. Not a great look. Obviously, higher priced businesses are going to have a longer sales cycle for people to make up their minds, so it makes sense to really warm people up over time. So what are some really good lead magnet types that people can offer on their website that you've personally seen some success with lately?
Before we get into examples of lead magnets, I'm going to tell you about a client that I met with the other day who told me that she had a woman reach out to her about a project who has been on her email list since 1997. So, point being, yes, people can like stick around on your email list for 3 months, a year, 2 years, 3 weeks before they actually get in touch with you. So it's a great, when you've got these big ticket services, like email it's always good, but it's especially good for that. We've been creating lead magnets for over 10 years, and it's for a few years now, it's been interactive stuff is the thing that works. So in our case, this would be style quizzes, things that are kind of like style quizzes where people pick something and then we send them something custom based on their selection. Calculators can work really, really well for driving traffic to your website, and then also for gathering email lists. We've done that for like, you know, ballpark pricing for a contractor. Fill out this, you know, information and we'll send you a ballpark quote automated. That kind of stuff is going to be your best bet.
So I asked Nicole about any specific results that she wanted to share, and she had to dig into her numbers a little bit, but she did email me back the next day about a client that she created a lead magnet quiz for that was able to quadruple their leads from 666 to 3,852 in less than a year. And that is really the secret to building your runway of high ticket clients. Your homepage is usually the first impression any new prospect has with your business. Once they get there, you've got about 5 seconds to either capture their attention enough to keep them scrolling toward working with you, or lose them forever. So yeah, your homepage really is that important. But are you making a critical mistake that could lose you that client? In this video, I'm going to show you the biggest homepage mistakes I see over and over again on websites that can absolutely kill your chances. Not only that, but I'll show you the fix too. So if you apply what I'm going to show you here, you'll be able to successfully capture their attention, hold it, and if you play your cards right, impress them enough to win their business. Okay, so let's start right off the bat with capturing attention. So the first thing that anyone's going to see when they get to your website is usually this right here. It's called the hero section. And one of the worst, most damaging mistakes that I see over and over again is simply missing the point of the hero section. So what is the point of the hero section anyway? Well, it's really simple. All it needs to do is tell people what you do, why it matters, and what they need to do to get it. And when businesses get this section wrong, which let's face it, they almost always do, this can happen in any number of ways. So the first way I want to bring up here is it can just be super unclear what you actually do. Maybe the language you're using is overly vague, or like this, filled with techno jargon that nobody but you really gets. Like, look at this headline and subheadline here, and I challenge you to see if you have any idea what this company actually does. Or maybe you're like those businesses who fall into that SEO trap where you just keyword stuff your headline to death to the point where, sure, Google might pick up on it, but when actual human beings land here, you know who I mean? I'm talking about your clients. They're just left cold because nothing about this headline says anything to them. There's no benefit, there's no real reason they would want to work with you based on this. And another way the businesses miss the mark here is making the hero section all about them. Here's the thing, some harsh truth now. Nobody really cares yet about you or your business. They came to your website because they're hoping that you can help them solve some kind of a problem they have, not to read, that you're voted top dentist or you're award winning or anything like that. So how do we fix the hero section? I'm going to give you one really simple formula that works for any service business that you can use right now. And that's to use your main headline to simply state what you do, then use your sub-headline to briefly say how you improve your client's life. Doesn't have to be an earth-shattering improvement. This works if you solve any kind of problem for clients, whether it's a big life transformation or a smaller problem, high class, what I call champagne problems, or even emergencies. Just be really, really clear here, because not only will a confused mind not buy, it's actually even worse than that. If you confuse people at the top of your homepage, they're not gonna scroll down to get clear on what you do. In other words, if you confuse them here, you will lose them here. Okay, so what is this actually going to look like in real life? Well, let's take our dentist example, who has the very business-centric, voted Philadelphia's top dentist 5 years running. What if we replace that using the formula I just gave you with modern dentistry with a smile, from routine cleanings and fillings to full mouth makeovers? We're here to keep your smile happy and healthy. See how this hits on all three things. Again, so what we're doing with this headline is we're saying exactly what we provide. Then here we talk about how that makes, in this case, their patients' lives better. Okay, so now it's time for mistake number 2, and that is using the wrong images on your website. So take a look at this one, for instance. We're still on our dentist example. We fixed the headline and subheadline, but the image still needs some work because this particular image is, again, very focused on the business. It's showing the dentist at work, not what the patient is going to experience after having worked with them. So this is one way it can go wrong. I see this a lot. Another way images can go wrong is by choosing stock images that are very cheesy. They're very overly posed. They show really unnatural emotions. Does it check the box of actually showing the aftermath that your client is going to experience? It does. It does show people meant to represent your clients, but in no way does this feel like a real moment in time that was captured. This feels very staged, very phony. So my fix for this is just to choose better stock images, choose smarter. So something like this is going to be much more of a slam dunk when it comes to connecting with people because it feels Like this is a real moment captured in time, right? Anytime you can choose a photo that feels more natural, it's automatically gonna connect that much better. And by the way, there are many places online where you can find photos like this. I actually recommend Adobe Stock, and you can just choose their free option. They have a ton of really amazing free stock photos that you can use, just like this one. And speaking of images, let's go on to mistake number 3, which is mismatching those images. So let's take a look at a little services section right here. You might notice that these 3 photos don't really look like they belong together, do they? This one has that kind of Instagram-y, filter on it. This one's black and white, and then this one's super colorful and vibrant. So all you really need to do is just make sure you're choosing images that look like they belong to the same family, whether that means choosing all from the same photographer, or just being really mindful of, okay, do they have the same vibrancy level? Do they have the same energy level, more or less? What I'll actually do a lot is if I find the photo I want to use that I know I want to use, I will actually just click through to that photographer's whole portfolio on the stock site and see what I can find within that. It's much more likely to match up if you do it that way. And if you're getting stock icons, you want to avoid style mismatches there too. So to be safe, just choose from the same icon pack. Okay, so time for our next mistake, which involves these call to action buttons. So here's the thing, when people are coming to your website, you want them to actually do something there, right? Like schedule a consultation or book an appointment or even just call you. Problem is when you make your call to action buttons confusing, like right here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 call to action buttons, and none of them say the same thing or look the same. And that's a big problem, and it's one that I see all the time. So what do we want to do instead? Well, the first thing you want to do is figure out exactly what you want your call to action button to say. Specifically, you want it to be specific. So we don't want something like get started or, book now is okay, but what we'd really rather have is something like book an appointment or book a free consultation, something that's very specific that tells them exactly what's happening next. And then once you've got the verbiage figured out, what you want to do is make all of your buttons incredibly consistent from one to the next. So that means you choose a color that goes with the rest of your website's branding, but also stands out. What I mean by that is you're not going to use your button color anywhere else on your entire website, okay? Let me say that again, because nobody ever listens to that advice when I give it. You don't want to use your button color on your logo or on your icons or in any design treatments on your website, just your button, and that's it. That's going to make it incredibly clear to people that this is the next step that they need to take if they want to work with you. And then ideally you want to repeat that call to action in multiple points on your homepage to make sure that once they've gotten enough information and they're actually ready to click it, it's right there for them ready to go. Okay, so now it's time for our next mistake, and that is chaotic spacing. I cannot tell you how many times I see this. Anything from text being too close to the borders or buttons being too close to the content. And again, there's just not enough padding here for people's eyes to rest. Because here's the thing, if you don't leave any space anywhere, or if you leave too much space for that matter, people's eyes are gonna tend to wander, or they're just gonna feel overwhelmed and they're gonna get the heck out of there. So don't worry though, I'm gonna show you exactly how to fix it. So what you wanna do ideally is you wanna give it at least 80 pixels of padding inside of a section. So if you're using Elementor, you just go to padding and I'll just type in 80, and that already looks much better there. And then you want to give some breathing room for this button. So I'm just going to click that, go to advanced and padding. I'll give it, and I'll just zero out the margin and see what that looks like. That already looks better. Then we also need to give it a little bit of a margin on the bottom. So let's do 80 there. See how much more nice and breathable this already feels. And then I'll do the same thing right here. And that feels pretty nice already. Okay, so time for our next mistake, and that is not telling a complete story right there on your homepage. So many business owners, what they do is they make all these different pages. I've seen as many as like 50 different pages on a website, thinking people are gonna click through, they're gonna read all these different pages, they're gonna get what they want, when they want it, which that is a double-edged sword, actually. What you don't want to do so much is let people wander around on your website on their own, because they're going to start coming up with their own story at that point. Once people start clicking all these other pages and they start wandering the woods on their own, now they're taken out of that path to conversion. So what I'd rather see you do is tell a much more complete story on your homepage from top to bottom. This is a blink, about 50 milliseconds. And that's roughly how long it takes someone visiting your website to form their opinion of your business. Sure, everything about your website, from its design to its loading speed, has a big impact. But one of the key factors in determining whether a potential client sticks around isn't what your website looks like, but what it says. It's not about clever phrasing and super polished messaging either. It often comes down to a simple question: is your website's content specific enough to make an impression? So let's back up. What does it mean to be specific? In short, it just means you get really precise with your language so you can cut through the digital noise. The more specific you are, the more your words are going to lure people in, almost like a zoom in effect. And why does it work? Well, the answer is surprisingly simple, and it comes down to basic internet behavior. Let's call it reading versus scanning. The average person actually reads your website only about 16% of the time. And this might sound crazy low, but according to research, web users aren't reading the way you imagine they would. If you curl up with a good book, that's reading. But on your website, people are quickly skimming around with a goal in mind. Maybe they're looking for a great house cleaning service. Maybe they need the name of an exterminator in their area. Or maybe they're browsing product reviews before they buy a stand mixer. Whatever they're doing, it all boils down to one thing: info gathering. And now that you know what your site visitors are looking for, that is a huge opportunity for you to lean into it and succeed where all your competition is very likely failing. So here are 3 ways you can get hyper-specific on your website and catch the attention of all those skimmers. Headlines are key when it comes to skimming a website for quick answers, and they're a great opportunity to put something relevant front and center. The best headlines are really specific to your business. So how do you write a great, super specific headline? It's probably going to be easiest here just to show you a few examples of what's bad and what's good. So don't write testimonials when you can write why people love our dog sitting service. Don't write about us when you can write why we're obsessed with keeping your pet healthy. Client testimonials is accurate but boring. Why people love our dog sitting service is vivid and descriptive. It tells people who you are. It hints at the enthusiasm that your clients have for your business. Yes, it's only the difference of 4 words, but that's the power of specificity. And being specific doesn't just liven up your headlines either. It can get more of your keywords into those all-important header tags for search engines too. Win-win. If you've ever read a headline in a website like this one or this one, and your eyes just kind of glaze over, it's probably because you've heard it all before. And cliches are really interesting because theoretically, they should work. Every cliche started out as a good idea at one point. The first person to write that you have to read between the lines honestly had a pretty good metaphor on their hands. But here's the thing, cliches are, by definition, played out. Scanners ignore them, and readers just roll their eyes. So let's look at an example here, the Apple website. So Apple has a section on its website where it advertises the Apple Card. It's a credit card that you can get directly from the company. If Apple's copywriters had used a cliche, they might write a headline like, Apple Card, spend more, earn more. On the surface, that sounds like a pretty good headline. Everybody wants to earn more, but it's wording that we've all heard before from just about every credit card company that came before, rendering it practically invisible. But instead, Apple ditches the cliches and focuses on a really specific numerical benefit to using their card. Apple Card, get up to 3% daily cash back with every purchase. That's not a slogan, that's an actual promise. But, that's Apple, so how do overused cliches work themselves into your typical small business website? Ironically enough, it usually happens when you try to talk about what makes you so unique. How many times have you seen a business say something like, customer satisfaction is our top priority? The problem is, that phrase has been overused to the point where it just doesn't carry much weight. Now compare that to, We guarantee a 1-hour response time for all customer support requests so that your issue's solved fast. That's better because it actually says something, right? Or what about a catering business who says, we go the extra mile? Compared to, beyond simply delivering delicious, professionally prepared meals, we work closely with our clients to tailor our menus to the dietary preferences and restrictions of their guests, ensuring everyone can enjoy their meal. Or my personal favorite, the digital marketing agency who claims, we're the leading provider. How about we rework that one to, we're known for our creative projects that boost our clients' website visitors by 35% on average within the first 3 months. And speaking of numbers, let's talk digits. A study found that in the world of news, using numbers increases story credibility. And this doesn't just apply to the news. So in other words, the simple act of dropping specific numbers will make the statement itself appear more credible. Let's take a look at some examples here. So at Dropbox, the main headline doesn't say, lots and lots of people love using Dropbox. It says, join over 700 million registered users who trust Dropbox. A big difference, now Dropbox sounds credible and like something we really want to have. At Zendesk, it scrolls through several hero images along with specific stats that highlight the statistical improvements that their customers regularly see. And it actually works even better if you don't round your numbers. So this is something that scientists call the precision bias. It just says that people tend to think that exact numbers are more legit or trustworthy than rounded up or rounded down ones. It's like when we see an exact number, we think, oh, that's way too specific to be a guess. They must have really crunched the numbers, makes it feel much more solid and believable. But what if you don't have specific numbers? Just start gathering them, sooner the better. Ask previous clients about their results. What tangible benefits can you take from them and quote on your website? Or just research statistics that are commonly found in your niche. And adding numbers doesn't just add specificity, it lends credibility to any claims that you make. And for all this specificity to do its job best, you actually need to put it all in the right order from top to bottom to make a really airtight case for your business. Hey, I want to ask you something. Are you trying to sell something on your website? Are you talking to me? Yeah, who else would I be talking to? Are you trying to sell something on your website? Of course, Wes, that's the point of a website. Well, then let me ask you this, and this is for everyone watching. When a visitor lands on your website, what's the main objective that you want to meet? Usually, it's to give a little bit of info on what you do and how you're going to help your potential client. Then, once they've absorbed all that information, there should only be one question that they have left to ask from their experience on your website, and that's, how do I get what you're selling me? How'd you get in here? It sounds simple enough, but I kid you not, this is the single biggest piece of advice I give on my channel that everybody ignores. So click right here and I'll show you how. Sorry, what now? And that is not giving your CTA enough attention. And if you don't know, a CTA is your call to action. Those buttons that tell you what's next and that you want your users to actually click on to get started in working with you. In fact, 70% of small businesses don't even feature a call to action on their homepage at all. Now, this is a massive missed opportunity because a call to action, true to its name, encourages your users to take action, which is what drives conversions, lead generation, and sales. However, despite it being an indisputable fact that CTAs are a necessary part of any website, hardly anyone actually treats it that way. And the ones that do use one almost always get it wrong. Now, there are many ways you could half-ass your call to action button, and these mistakes generally fall into two main categories: messaging and design. So let's talk about those messaging mistakes first, because it's not enough to just put out any call to action and hope that everyone's gonna bite, right? You have to use the right bait, and vague passive language just ain't gonna cut it. I'm not ready. Do I though? Yeah! What was the question? Here's a truth for you. If your ask is in any way unclear, that's no sale. So to combat that and make sure that your call to action is incredibly clear and specific, here are a few tips and best practices that I've always used on my own and on my clients' websites as well. So first, you want to use specific action words whenever possible. Words like book, get, or schedule show initiative and will always outperform words like submit, contact, or the dreaded learn more. Because when you see a button that says contact us or learn more, how clear are you on what the next step is? When you click that little button, are you going to be filling out a form and then just wait for an email back? Does the button open up a chat window or dial them up directly on the phone? And what's that conversation even going to be about? And see, that lack of clarity right there is going to subconsciously stop a huge percentage of your visitors from going any further with you. So be specific and emphasize the action step and what they're actually signing up for. Next, you want to pay attention to the words you and me in your calls to action. So conversion rate optimization expert Michael Agard did a study where he just changed a single word in his call to action just due to a hunch, and he saw a pretty incredible and unexpected result. So he changed the button text "Start my free 30-day trial" to "Start your free 30-day trial," because he thought that since the whole page up till now was using second person language, talking to visitors using the word you suddenly, switching to first person and the word my would be jarring, and his hunch told him that that would make click-through rates worse. Turns out he couldn't have been more wrong. So that one simple, well-meaning change made click-throughs plummet, and when he changed it back to "Start my free 30-day trial," click-throughs shot up by 90%. So maybe jarring is good in this case, and that just goes to show you sometimes you need to do something unexpected to get the results you want. And continuing on with that last example, maybe you noticed he included the word free in his CTA. Well, that just happens to be my next tip. So the word free is an incredibly powerful motivator, and maybe you're not offering anything for free, in which case, fair enough, but if you're a service provider, the first step toward working with you is often some kind of free consultation or call. So if you were to simply include the free word in there, you'll be surprised how much extra that can count for. Okay, so now let's move on to the call to action mistakes that fall more into that design category. So your main CTA needs to do a few things. It needs to be really obvious, and it needs to be consistent. By obvious, I mean it needs to stand out amongst everything else on your site. In other words, this isn't the time for subtlety. Make your call to action button a bold color that works with your color scheme, but very clearly stands out from the other colors. And what this also means is you don't want to use that same color anywhere else on your entire website. Not in your logo, or in your icons, or in your text, nowhere but your call to action button. And the other part of this is consistency. So part of making your CTA obvious is repeating it over and over again in various places around your site. And when you do that, that button should be 100% the same each and every time you use it. I'm talking same color, same text, same overall style. Because you want your calls to action to be recognizable across all of your pages. That gives you the opportunity to include it in multiple places without overwhelming your visitor. Think of it like the traffic light of your website. So without question, you know that green is go and red is stop, right? Let blue, or whatever color works best with your branding on your website, undoubtedly mean book a call. How many websites do you think you've seen at this point in your life? Probably tens of thousands at least. And if I asked you to draw a layout of a website for a business in your niche, it'd probably look a little something like this. Pretty typical. So if this is exactly what you'd expect a website like yours to look like, shouldn't you subvert those expectations and take a hard pivot into something more creative? Actually, no. And hear me out, this isn't just my opinion, it's completely backed by Google's own research. So we know that having a beautiful site, or at least an attractive one, makes you look more credible as a real business, therefore more trustworthy. Well, what Google found was that site visitors will judge your website as beautiful or not within 1/50th to 1/20th of a second. But get this, it's where things get really interesting. Visually complex websites were consistently rated as less beautiful than simpler ones. Not only that, but highly prototypical sites, those with layouts that are similar to other layouts in their category that also had a simple website design, were rated the most beautiful. In other words, the study found that the simpler the design, the better. So what exactly is prototypicality?
It's basically the mental image your brain creates to categorize everything you come across. Whether it's cars, interior design, or websites, your brain has a template for how things should look and feel.
When it comes to website prototypicality, there are different mental images that you might have for specific types of websites. For example, you probably have a mental image for, travel booking sites, e-commerce stores, blogs, and yeah, service businesses.
If any of these websites looks too different from your mental image, it just feels off, and your brain will reject it on a subconscious level.
That is why it's so crucial for websites to meet certain expectations. But what exactly are those expectations? Well, that's where simplicity comes in. So our brains would rather think about the things that are easy to think about. It's not laziness, it's just how we're able to prioritize and sort through all the crap that we see every minute of every day. The average adult brain can only hold between 5 to 9 chunks of information in their short-term or working memory. So working memory is what helps us focus our attention, resist distractions, and make decisions. So on a website that's low in complexity and highly typical, their working memory is freed up to process all the important stuff that you actually want your site visitors to see. Things like benefits, your unique value proposition, guarantees, and testimonials. But if you deviate from their expectations with a layout that's a little too creative for its own good, their working memory is going to be too busy processing that instead of what you really wanted them to notice. So when it comes to websites, we naturally prefer the ones where we instinctively know where everything is and what actions we're supposed to take. That's why it's important for websites to really stick to certain design standards. For instance, it's common for service business websites to have a big widescreen hero image, a 3-column layout for benefits, and a section that showcases their different services. These layouts have become prototypical within the category, and they just help create that cozy, familiar feeling for everyone. But it's not all about just playing into layout expectations. The science of simplicity is also about the overall design of your site. And while taste is subjective, what I think is a nice looking site might be really different from what you or your client thinks looks good. There's a very science-y rule of thumb for that too. A joint study found that there was one thing that is universal. The more visually complex websites they showed to all participants across a really vast variety of people had less visual appeal across the board. So, a simple and clean design is more likely to be visually appealing to a much wider range of people. And there's a reason why less visually complex websites are considered more beautiful. They don't require our eyes and brain to work nearly as hard to decode, store, and process that information. But what happens more often than not is when you're planning out your website, it might start off simple, but then you'll start to say things like, it feels like something's missing, or something should really fill in this space here, it looks empty. So you start to add unnecessary copy or images, which just adds to the visual complexity of the website and takes away from what made it so beautiful in the first place. We do this kind of thing where we expect more of ourselves than of others all the time. We look at someone else's website, which looks perfectly nice to us, but when it's our website, we suddenly become hypercritical of every little decision. Especially if you're hiring a designer and you think that they need to earn their paycheck by using every single available square inch for more design. In the book Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug, he says good design, when it's done well, becomes invisible. It's only when it's done poorly that we notice it. And that doesn't mean there's not room for unique design choices. You can still make your website stand out from your competition while still having a conventional layout that's really easy for users to navigate. You just need to infuse creativity within those limitations. And one way to be creative is through visual design. While you definitely should stick to conventional design layouts that users are familiar with, you can still play around with color schemes and fonts, spacing and imagery to create a unique look and feel for your website. So think about your brand and what makes it different from others in your industry. Then use those unique qualities to inspire your web design. You can also add unique features to your website that go beyond the conventional layout. Consider adding interactive elements like quizzes, little animations instead of icons, and video instead of static images to engage your site visitors and create a much more memorable experience. These elements can also help users remember your brand and return to your website in the future. Picture this. You've poured your heart and soul into creating the perfect website for your small business, but instead of skyrocketing sales, it's actually sabotaging your own success. Now, since this is such an important topic, I knew I needed backup, so I asked my friend and fellow website coach, Josh Hall, to help me out here so that we can expose the 7 hidden traps that even savvy entrepreneurs fall for with their websites. And even better, you'll find out how to turn the tables, unlock your website's true potential, and save your business. And if you're thinking, come on, Wes, my website's not gonna make or break my business, I'm here to tell you firsthand that yes, it can. My students' businesses routinely see lifts in both traffic and conversion rates when they implement this stuff. They get more calls from people who've been to their website, and they even get clients booking appointments and consultations right from the website, and those are clients they weren't getting before that they are getting now. So yeah, the stuff's that powerful. Okay, Josh, you're the guest, so I'm gonna let you go first. What is the biggest mistake you see that holds most business websites back?
I think the biggest mistake I see nowadays, especially with small business owners, is they make a website a small book. The big thing to remember is that people scan websites, and there is a time to get very wordy and have a lot of copy and a lot of messaging and to get really detailed, but those are in forms of blog posts. When it comes to your homepage and your sales pages, brevity is key. So get to the pain points really quick, get to the benefits, and make it very clear what the offer is. If the offer is vague and people don't understand what's in it for them and what the result is, then that's a problem. And maybe you do articulate that, but it's like really far down on a page. And it's kind of like having a really good point in a book that's 300 pages in. Like, no, you want to get the point as quickly as possible to keep somebody engaged. So yeah, I would try to cut out half of the words that you have right now and just make sure it's the good stuff.
So how do you cut your homepage in half without losing any of the good stuff? Sounds like a case for ChatGPT. Within ChatGPT, just use this prompt. I'm trying to make my homepage less wordy. I'll paste what I have now and give me back a condensed version, keeping all important points, just cut out the fluff. Try to make it half as long as it is now. Are you ready for the text? When it confirms that it understands what you're going for, just paste in all the text from your page and let it do its thing. You may need to do a little bit of manual rewording to still sound like you, but you'll be amazed how good a job it's gonna do all on its own. Have you heard the saying that a confused mind always says no? Yet everywhere I look, I see these websites that are unintentionally shrouded in mystery. I have no idea what the company actually does because they hide it behind vague or overly corporate language, or even worse, those generic welcome messages. This is a huge problem for these businesses because science tells us that people need to be crystal clear on what you do and how you can help them in 3 to 5 seconds. And you need to do it right up top here in what we call the hero section. Otherwise, they're not going to scroll down any further to try to solve the mysterious case of what you do. So what's the secret sauce for an irresistible hero section? First, you need a clear and concise headline that instantly communicates your unique value. Ditch the jargon and complicated phrases and just be real about what you offer. Next, complement that headline with a powerful image or visual that resonates with your audience. The best thing to do here is just use a photo that's meant to show that happy after state that your customers are in after you've helped them. And last but not least, don't forget to include a really strong call to action. Guide your visitors toward the next step, whether it's scheduling a free consultation or checking out your products. And in the spirit of being crystal clear with your prospects, there's another way that your website can drop the ball, which is
making a brand vague with who's behind it. You may be afraid to look like you're a smaller company and you want to look bigger, you want to look like an agency, or you want to look like you have a huge team. But if you don't have a huge team and you're not an agency, that's fine. Give the brand some loyalty and trust with who the heck is behind it. And one of the easiest ways you can do that is with a founder's note. It's something that I added to a sales page that I designed recently. Right after the pricing table section, there's a little section of me that just has a personal note. It's kind of my version of a founder's note that just says, hey, if you're here, you made it to the pricing table, I just want to let you know when you join, this is what to expect and this is what we're all about. So I would encourage everyone to add a founder's note to a homepage and a sales page.
That's a cool idea. It actually does solve that problem of, is this a real business? Am I going to be dealing with a real person or what? So how should somebody write a section like that?
Oh, that's a great question, Wes. My tip for writing a founder's note would be, if somebody were to ask you, why should I sign up? What would you say in a minute? And that's your founder's note.
So you're browsing the internet looking for, a lawyer, and you stumble on a website that looks pretty sleek. Then you start reading it and it feels like you're reading a legal document or an instruction manual. It's so stiff, sterile, and professional that you can't even connect with the message. So you get frustrated and you click away to continue your search. The problem here is that the website's copy failed to make that human connection. It's like meeting someone at a party who only talks in technical terms and never cracks a smile.
Say, is that your dog?
It's a dog.
Pretty soon, you're looking for an escape route. So what's the solution? Well, it's just all about using casual, friendly, and conversational copy on your website. Here's why. When your copy feels like a conversation between friends, it's easier for your visitors to relate and connect with your brand. And that connection leads to trust. It's like having a chat over coffee with a helpful friend who's got your back. Plus, as Einstein once said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Subconsciously, people will feel like you have a much better grasp on your expertise when you can put it in simple terms. Unfortunately, so many businesses feel like they need to do the opposite to prove their experience and how smart they are. So if you insist on doing the smart thing, listen to the smart guy. So when's the last time you bought anything or hired any kind of business without reading any reviews or testimonials first? Just doesn't happen anymore, right? We're pretty much hooked on testimonials, and for good reason. We need to know that others have gone before us and gotten a good result. And your clients are no different. They need to read testimonials about you too, but you know that this isn't news, but
when you put testimonials on your site, do not do what I used to do, which is to just load a huge, multi-paragraph blob of text on there, because no one's going to read that. And it's 2023 now. When you do social proof of any kind, you really have to make it, again, with this lens of scanning websites, you have to make it quick and snappy. So one thing I would recommend doing is if a client gives you an amazing testimonial, but it's 3 paragraphs and you're like, well, this is great, but no one's going to read this, grab a little catchy sentence out of it or a little catchy headline and make that a header.
Oh, I love this. So what else can people include to make their testimonials more powerful?
Ideally, if you can, the picture of the person. That really, most people just blow right past testimonials if they're just text. So I know we've talked about this, Wes. If you can have a picture of the person, it goes such a long way. When I was putting together the sales page of my new web design membership, I got a lot of great testimonials, but it was this case exactly. They were huge paragraphs often. One of my students said, she sent kind of a couple paragraphs of text, but in one of those paragraphs, he said, only join if you want you to go up to the next tax bracket. And I was like, that's a great line. But based off of everything we've talked about so far, it was hidden. It was hidden in that paragraph. So I just took it out, made it a headline. And now when you'll see her, Maggie, on that sales page, That's the headline. And then there's the rest of her testimonial.
Right after social proof and testimonials, there's another type of content that future customers and clients are definitely looking for on your site, but most businesses are really hesitant to actually include it. But if you want to increase conversions and truly put your website to work for you as your #1 salesperson, you have to address pricing. If you don't, trust me, they're just gonna keep looking around on your competitors' websites until they find something that helps answer those pricing questions. In other words, they're gonna find what they want. So wouldn't you rather be the one that gives it to them?
I feel like a lot of people are afraid to make it really clear what their packages are. And you don't have to necessarily put your pricing depending on the service. Like in my case, for web designers, we're often offering somewhat custom pricing. So we don't necessarily want to put like $5,000 or $10,000 on the homepage or a service page, but you can still articulate your packages. And the reason I say this is no matter what industry you're in, if people don't really know, number one, what you do, but like how you do it, like what the process is or what the deliverables are at least, it's a conversion nightmare, because they're like, well, I'm not even sure like how this works or what's this include. If it's like a digital marketing service, goodness, it could be everything or anything. So my recommendation on that would be to really, really get clear about your packages and your offers, and do not be afraid to put those on there clear as day. You could also always do ranges. So you could say tier 1 are typically these ranges, tier 2, these ranges, and then tier 3 is this range.
Not to freak you out, but 61% of your potential clients will leave your website to go to your competitors in under 5 seconds if they don't see what they need to on your site. So today, I'm gonna reimagine 3 small business websites submitted by you, my YouTube audience, so you can see what really makes people leave some sites and stay around long enough to convert on others. These new versions have much higher conversion power than the originals, so you're gonna learn a ton about what you can tweak on your own website to get those higher conversions too. Okay, so let's start off with Stephen C. Shepard's site. So the good news is I can pretty much tell what he does right away, thanks to his logo right up top. And through his images, I can tell he's an architect, and it looks like he mostly works on residential homes. But there's a lot that could be improved here, and I guess I'm just gonna start with the obvious, which is that the site just feels very dated. This isn't how websites are generally laid out anymore. We have this big space for photos right up here, and the text is just pushed off to the side in this extremely small and kind of hard to read font. And what's worse, this text that's over here, it's pretty much just a welcome message that ends up being all about him and his business. He doesn't really talk about the problems that he solves for clients at all, which is a huge missed opportunity because that is what sells services. And I'd say the images here aren't super sharp. Some are just snapshots, and some are actually, let me find one, some are just kind of like oil paintings almost, like this one. I think people really want to see those high-res, crystal clear, sharp photos, especially when what you're selling is so visual. And let's say I wanted to actually work with Stephen. I would have no idea how, because there's no call to action button. All I'm seeing is this contact button, but it blends right in with the main menu, so most people are just going to skip it. So what would I do differently? So here is my reimagined version, and you can tell a few really important differences right away. First of all, this new layout just brings the site into 2023, right? And the main image it's nice and sharp, and it has a layout that people are used to, which really just helps them be able to focus on the content and know where to go and what to do. And this headline is completely client-focused and results-driven. And this subheadline makes it crystal clear exactly what he offers. And now the call to action is super clear too. And when we scroll down, you can see that I did opt to keep the dark background that he had on his old site just to keep some kind of brand consistency there. And I just wanted to show you that this actually can be done. A couple of years ago, I was pretty against having light text on a dark background. But the thing is, so many people are using dark mode on their apps these days that I really do think people are getting more used to this, and some people actually prefer it. So it's really just a judgment call on what's gonna work best for your business and for your brand. And it's not like you can never talk about yourself on your website. You know, Steven's little section on the old site was pretty focused on him. You can still talk about you and your business, but I just brought it a little further down the page where it's a more appropriate time to, you know, introduce yourself as the solution that they're looking for. But you can't do that before you've made it about your client and their needs first. And then we've got a few more sections that just continue building the case for the business. You know, what's in it for the client. We've got this benefits section here, you know, using another opportunity to show more photos because this is a very, you know, visual-based business. We have a great section here which just kind of lays out the process for working with you. And we have some testimonials for increased trust and proof that you can really do what you say you can. So if your website has kind of a funky layout or it's outdated or the messaging is really mostly about you and not your clients, this is what's gonna work much better to get those higher conversions for you. Okay, next we have a website that definitely feels more modern in its design. You know, it's definitely nice and clean, but maybe it's a little too clean because I can see a really big problem right here at the top of the website. I see a really big logo and that they offer counseling and therapy. So it is clear what they offer, but that's really only half the equation for what makes a strong hero section like this. Because, you know, while clarity is great, you need that, the why is probably even more important. In other words, why choose the tiny room over somebody else? You know, why does it matter to me and how's it gonna make my life better? And don't get me wrong, you know, people do scroll down websites, but if you don't give them those two things, what you offer and why it matters right here above the fold, most people won't make it any further than this. And if you do scroll down, you'll get the basics of what they offer and kind of like their origin story here, but there's honestly nothing here about why us. What's the unique selling proposition? You know, I'm not seeing any benefit section or anything that outlines it in a really easily skimmable way. I mean, it might be buried somewhere here in these kind of paragraphs of text, but people don't read websites, they skim them. So let's take a look at my revised version. So here it is, and the first thing you'll notice, I got rid of the big logo taking up all the space here and just put it where it belongs, right up in the top left. And that leaves us all this room in the top hero section to say all the stuff that really matters. So the headline here, once again, talks about results or the transformation that's possible. Then the subheadline gets more specific about how that's possible, you know, through specialized therapy services, online and in person. And we also make it known here who they specialize in, you know, tweens, teens, adults, and corporate professionals. And since they specialize in all those different age groups and demographics, it's hard to just go with one overall hero image to sell that. So I decided to play around and have fun with this kind of treatment where we're showing more of a variety of customer photos. Because another common trap here would be to show photos of yourself as the therapist. You don't want to do that here. You want to make the hero section all about your customers, or I guess I should say patients in this case. And then, you know, if you go back to their site, so they basically have this section where it just kind of lists out all the different things they offer. But I decided to, you know, +1 that a little bit by having a whole well thought out journey here based on what I call the customer saga framework. We start by showing the problem they're facing, then the solution, which is us, right? Then we have benefits, how it all works, you know, the step 1, 2, 3 for getting started working with us. And then finally, testimonials. Then, you know, all that stuff about our story, our origin story, all that good stuff, that can just go on your About Us page. So if your website doesn't really say much at the top of your homepage, like if it's a giant logo like this, or if it's, you know, just a kind of generic welcome message like this is a much better way of handling that hero section or above the fold section to get more consultations, appointments, or bookings, because you're actually hitting on all the important beats that make people want to take action. Okay, next up, this is Evolver's agency website. So overall, I would say they have a nicely designed site. You know, I would say it's pretty clean and sophisticated in its design, but there are a few problems that I want to point out. So first, if we go back up to this top section here, we have a hero section that just doesn't really say much other than these like rotating kind of taglines. So the problem is when I read these taglines, I still don't know what they do exactly. You know, these are all fairly fluffy statements, which can work, right? But only if you immediately follow it up with something that's much more concrete that says how. So we're definitely missing clarity for sure. And we're also missing that call to action button. There's not one here in the hero section. There's not even one up top in the navigation menu, which I always like to see. So if I wanted to work with them, I don't know how to get started. And honestly, this video background, while it's cool, it's way too busy. There's just too many cuts between scenes, and it ends up being pretty distracting. You know, it certainly takes away from the messaging because most people are just gonna be focusing on the video itself. And we have to scroll down to the next section to see any kind of a call to action button. And the problem there is it's black, it doesn't really stand out very much. And then we have to go to the next section after that before we get any mention that they're a marketing agency. And even here, pretty buried in here. Like I think, okay, so we have like brand marketing. So yeah, it's pretty buried in that paragraph. And when it comes to making conversions, we have a big problem here. So see these, we've got 3 different services on offer. We have brand strategy, marketing strategy, and comprehensive strategy. The problem is lots of people who might be interested in their overall approach might not know which of these they need, which can be a really big hurdle to jump over. And what might happen is they might just freeze and not do anything at all. But here's how I would fix all of these problems. This is my reimagined version. You know, I wanted to keep the overall feel of that first website with the neutral colors, the sophisticated fonts. And I also chose to keep a video background because I think they wanted something like that. But this one, doesn't it feel a lot more calm and purposeful? It's definitely not distracting away from the message anymore. And I think it pairs perfectly with the new headline and subheadline, which is all about marketing in an authentic, integrity-based way, which is what they seem to be about from digging into their old site, and focusing on just one key message and one nice ambient video background. This feels way less chaotic than the other version, right? So with this new top section, it's pretty clear what they do and what the result is. And scrolling down here, we see more customer saga-based content that hits on all those buyer's journey beats. But this is what I really want to highlight. So remember how they had all these services that people might just be a little confused about? But what I did here is I added a simple section that's prompting people to take a simple quiz that would end up telling them which package is the best fit for them right now. And this actually has a bonus effect too, because if you do a quiz like this and you make them put in their email address just before you reveal the results to get them, this can be a great email list builder too. And that is super important to have some kind of lead magnet like this on your website to get more of your first time traffic to come back again and again, which has been shown to lead to 8 times as many conversions. And after that, we've got a client-centric benefits section, and of course the 3-step plan to getting started to working with you, and a nicely designed featured testimonial block.
So now that you know what needs to change on your website, you may be left with even more questions like, okay, Wes, but how can I make these changes myself without spending a ton of money on writers or designers? Well, I've got you covered in my free on-demand masterclass training where I'm gonna lay it all out clean and simple, exactly what your website needs and what it should leave out if you want it to attract you new leads every single day, all on its own. So click right here and I'll save you a seat in the masterclass training. It's everything you need in one easy to sit through session. So click here and I'll share the entire system with you.